Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with episode 3 of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. So I've watched the first two episodes multiple more times with reactions and on my own and everything, and I really, really like this. Like, I've heard at least one person, definitely, I believe a few people, but definitely at least one I can name, and that's Jeff Thew of Mother's Basement, saying that this could be considered anime of the year. And I haven't watched like his big review video on it because I don't want spoilers yet, but I will be watching that once I finish. But based off these first two episodes, honestly, I can see it. If this series really sticks the landing with all of its episodes, I think it could be. Um, Now, I want to mention something that has been revealed. Apparently, there's been a big reveal where the creators of this and everything have said that they are not planning a season two. That they've heard all the complaining that people do about shows getting canceled prematurely on Netflix and other streaming services, to where they're never able to be finished and leave people hanging. And so they work to make this a solitary one season story to where it doesn't need any more. So they're not planning a season two. They have absolutely no, they have nothing in the works, and I think that's a good thing. I think that a lot of shows should be doing this. If they can get more seasons, it's great. But having a single season story can be great too. Not all shows need to go on forever. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of shows I love that have multiple seasons, or are just like really fucking long, like One Piece. um, but at the same time, again, not every show needs to be that. Sometimes a show can work with one or two seasons. Gravity Falls only had two seasons. You got to remember that Gravity Falls only had two seasons, and yet it's one of the most beloved Disney cartoons probably in history, not counting movies. We're talking about the shows here. If not the most popular. And that's saying a lot, honestly. Sometimes a show can work, and there's a valid point in there too. Like all of these shows getting canceled before their time, not getting a chance to truly shine or finish their stories, is terrible. It sucks. Like, you have stuff like Glitch Techs. You have, more recently, Dead End Paranormal Park. And so many other shows that just keep getting canceled. And a lot of times, I feel like it's going to make a lot of creators be unwilling to want to work with these streaming services. Excuse me. Especially Netflix. When all these shows are getting canceled left and right for no good reason. And Netflix has tried to do damage control with this stuff, saying, oh, these shows weren't popular enough, they weren't doing well enough on our platform to make it worth it and stuff. It's like, that's bullshit. They weren't doing well enough within Netflix's short time frame of desired performance. Because I've talked about this before, but if you don't understand, Netflix runs on the binge model, so they want people to binge the shows. If the shows are not being binged, if people aren't watching the entire series in the first, I don't know, like week, basically, at most, of the show's release, then they count that as doing poorly. Because they don't understand that, not everybody likes the binge model. Two, not everybody has the time to just binge through a bunch of shows. And three, the binge model actively hurts shows. It actually destroys interest and destroys discussion around the show. When a show is binged within a week, people forget about it just as quickly. The show, it doesn't have a continuing appeal to people. And because of that, the show ends up not gauging enough interest to continue. And then if a second season or something is released, it ends up doing poorly because people lost interest because of the binge model. This has happened with so many things. Even shows that don't necessarily release more seasons, but just more batches of episodes, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or Great Pretender. Shows like this that were ruined because of this binge model. And I'm specifically referring to part 6 of JoJo, because that was the one that Netflix aired. The other ones were just put on after the fact. But yeah, the interest in those shows were pretty much at zero by the end because of the release schedule. And with JoJo being one of those huge anime, that's a big deal. The fact that interest had dropped that badly because of how fucking terrible the release schedule for it was. But that's how the binge model works. That's its entire purpose. When people watch shows as, shows are meant to be enjoyed, Netflix and other streamers to a lesser degree view that as a failure. Because people actually care to watch a show at a reasonable pace instead of just bursting through it and forgetting about most of it like a week later. You don't have the time to take anything in. That's why I haven't been doing like a series like this like that quickly, even though I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind like blasting through a lot of this series because I'm enjoying it that much. I would love to watch more. But at the same time, this is definitely one of those shows that I want to take my time on because I want to be able to absorb it all. I want to be able to, excuse me, sorry about that. I want to be able to enjoy it. I want it to stick with me and not be something I forget about in a week while I just move on to other shit. So, yeah. Sorry for the rant, the rambling and everything about all of this, but sometimes I just need to let loose on that. And I believe I've talked about this kind of stuff before. I believe I've rambled about this topic before, but I needed to let that out here because, like I said, I feel it's a good thing that this series is sticking to just one self-contained season. That it's not going to be anything more than that, and that they chose to do this because of how people react to what these streaming services do with all of that. So I'm happy. I'm happy that we are getting a series that isn't trying to be anything more. That being said, I'm very excited to see where this series does end up going. And I'm very interested to see what more changes they make, because that's the biggest appeal of this right now. The fact that it isn't a one-to-one remake, but rather a reinterpretation. And that it's changing a lot. Episode 2 was honestly a lot better than Episode 1 because of the changes. Because it felt fresh and new while still keeping true to Scott Pilgrim. I feel like anyone who's really, like, genuinely complaining about this kind of thing, who thinks that, like, Scott Pilgrim has been ruined by these changes, it's like, I would like them to explain how, without just saying that the changes themselves are the problem. Like, actually explain to me how these changes ruin the show. How they hurt the overall feeling of the idea of Scott Pilgrim. Tell me that, because I bet you no one will be able to come up with anything that is satisfying. And here's the thing: if you don't like it, that's fine. If you're not enjoying it as much as you would if it were a one-to-one adaptation, that's fine. You're allowed. That's perfectly fine. But I have not seen a single person complaining about this who has actually given a genuine reason for why. It's just all been that it's different. It's literally been nothing but, oh, this is different. I don't like different. That's not a genuine reason. Again, if you don't like that, if you would wanted it to be more one-to-one, that's fine. You're allowed. But if you're going to be complaining about it and attacking people who enjoy it and just all of that stuff, at least give some kind of thought out reason for it. Don't just hate on it just because it's different. That seems a little childish to me. You're allowed to not like it, but if you're going to make a big spectacle about it, at least have a good reason. If it's just because you just don't like it, if it's just as simple as that, don't make a big spectacle out of it. Don't make it that big of a deal, because it's not one. If it's just you don't like it, just personally not for you, then it's not a big deal. Don't make a big deal out of it. You get what I'm saying? That being said, we are very far into this, but last we left off, the League of Evil Exes is under new management. Matthew Patel has defeated Gideon Graves and taken everything. And Ramona has found out that Scott is alive. We're not sure how. We're not sure in what way, but he's apparently alive. So now we move on and see how, I guess, we get Scott back. I guess that's now our current plot. So, that all being said, thank you all so much for tuning in. Let's get this going. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you once again for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Yeah, this could easily be Anime of the Year. Wow. There is a lot in this that was phenomenal, but and I'm not, before anyone says anything, I'll just address it here. I don't have much to say about the entire thing about Roxy and Kim kissing each other. Like, there's gonna be some people who are like, oh, they kissed. It was animated so sexy and everything. It's like, there were no sparks. Like, the funny thing is, I didn't even feel anything with that. Like, you watch it and you might, like, expect there to be something that comes from it, but I'm watching this, I'm like, this doesn't even feel right. Like, and it's not that I don't think, like, Kim can't be, like, queer or anything. No, Kim definitely could be queer. But Kim and Roxy, it's like, there's just nothing there. It's like, maybe friends, but, like, I just could not see them being together. It's like, it's not only were there no sparks in the series itself, but I didn't feel anything watching it. So I just wanted to get that out of the way right off the bat, because I know a lot of people are probably going to be talking about it, and you guys probably want to know my thoughts on it, because, I swoon over sexiness in various shows. I simp over sexy characters being sexy, like Drolta in Castlevania Nocturne and everything. But again, it's like there was nothing there, even from a viewer perspective. So the fact that it ended out with, like, them saying there was no sparks, and everything. There's nothing to that. It's like, yeah, I felt that. I understood that. Um, it just, it wouldn't have felt right if they did add in Sparks. Yet at the same time, they added in Sparks at the end for Gideon or Gordon, I guess, and for Julie. And even before those happened, even before the Sparks showed up, it's like I was feeling it. It's like, oh shit, this is making me ship these two. It's like, what is happening here? And it's like, okay, apparently this is a thing now. Also, just development for Gideon out of nowhere. Finding out that that Gideon Graves is a fake name, that his real name is Gordon, and that he's from Ontario, and just created this new identity for himself after he left. But in reality, he's just this kind of washed up loser wannabe. And seeing him kind of brought back down to that level again, and seeing Julie take him in, it's just like, what? This episode, though, kind of goes in line with that in terms of why this episode was so good. This episode is developing characters in a way that the movie just didn't have the time to do. A movie is like usually between 1.5 to 2.5 hours, depending on the film. Sometimes it can be longer, sometimes just a little bit shorter, but that's usually the typical length, depending on the film. And of course, in that time, you don't have enough time to develop every character, especially in a movie like this, where it's like you have all these evil exes who are just given like tiny little bits of information about their past with Ramona. So instead, here you have an 8-episode series where each episode is like half an hour long or so. And so you have more time to explore these characters. You have more time to develop them, give them actual character, and make them sympathetic. Make them characters that you can care about. Because in the movie, the evil exes were just the evil exes. There was not really anything more to them. They weren't really characters beyond that. They were a stepping stone for Scott to get with Ramona. They were a plot device at best. And they were cool plot devices. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, they were pretty badass, fun, and interesting characters. But they were plot devices nonetheless. Then you have here, you have this series where you have the second episode, which does a lot for Matthew Patel's character, and a little bit for Gideon and everything. But then you have this episode come out of nowhere and make Roxy like the best character ever. It's like, the fuck? I was tearing up watching this. Seeing Roxy's pain, seeing how much she was hurt over the way that Ramona nonchalantly left and just abandoned their relationship. And the fact that it didn't actually say any of this, but you understood it in like the snap of a finger because of just how well that was visualized. Like, oh my god. This is like masterful storytelling here. Like, seriously, it doesn't tell you what Ramona actually did, but you understand it perfectly. They were college roommates and ended up becoming, more. They ended up falling in love and having a very physical relationship, from what we can tell. It's made pretty obvious they had a physical relationship. Beyond the kissing, I mean. Like, just to put it simply, they fucked. They 100% fucked. But we see that, I guess when Ramona was leaving college, she just left behind Roxy as well, without so much as a word, without any real breakup. She just left. and just left that part of her life behind. And Ramona herself said it was because she was afraid. She was afraid to actually pull that trigger to, you know, confront Roxy about it. Instead, we saw what happened. She glanced back at Roxy a couple times, but, like, focused her attention on someone else, I guess, when she was leaving. And she just chose not to care about Roxy's feelings and instead just abandoned her like that. That's honestly fucked up. Like, Ramona in the movie is kind of painted as like this pixie dream girl character. Like she's like just awesome. You just love her and everything. She has baggage in the way of these evil exes, but she's an awesome character. She's super likable. And so the fact that here, in just episode 3, not even like technically the halfway point, she's shown to have made very notable mistakes to the point that it actually hurt someone really badly. Not physically, but emotionally. And caused some genuine emotional issues for Roxy. And you know what this reminds me of? Just in maybe less of a extreme manner. Hell of a Boss. It reminds me of Blitz and Fizz. How Blitz just left Fizz behind, just abandoned him in his moment of need. While in this kind of situation with Ramona and Roxy, Roxy wasn't left behind after getting horrifically, scarred and injured. It's not quite that like that, but he left Fizz behind. Plus, there's also the fact that him and Fizz weren't technically a couple and everything, even though it's very clear they had feelings for each other. There is still a similarity. It ended up causing a massive rift between the two, with Fizz coming across antagonistic. But it's eventually revealed that Blitz was the one in the wrong. That he knew that he was the one in the wrong. And he had to apologize for it. The exact same thing that just happened with Ramona. She was in the wrong. She was the one who hurt Roxy. She knew that she had done this, but was afraid to acknowledge it. And instead had to be the one to apologize here and make things right. And just like with Blitz and Fizz and Hell of a Boss, it allowed these two to grow close together again. To the point where they're friends. Maybe not with benefits, but friends. And that's kind of what happened with Blitz and Fizz. Even if they weren't, like, at the best of terms still right away, which, fair, but, yeah. The fact that it gave all this development, all this depth, all this just character to Roxy and Ramona here is fantastic. It also allows Julie a chance to shine in this episode. She gets a lot of screen time. It's just like, how do you do this? You give Julie screen time. You give Kim a lot more screen time. You develop them. But you also develop one of the main characters with Ramona and one of the main antagonists who is not actually evil in any way, but is just really a hurt girl just seeking revenge for, being emotionally fucked up by someone she cared greatly for. It's like, just, I'm kind of speechless over how good this is. I'm just so in shock and awe over how well this was handled. And how fucking much I care about Roxy now. Like, don't get me wrong. I liked Roxy, but she was never my favorite in the movie. Like, when watching the movie, my favorite would probably have been Kim, just because I kind of get a kick out of those like sarcastic type of characters. But I also really liked Ramona, and the evil X again. The evil X's and other characters as well were great characters, but not really characters. Like I said, they didn't really have much of anything to them. And now, just at least for these first 3 episodes, this could obviously change, but by these first 3 episodes, unquestionably, like, Roxy's my favorite. It's just like, I feel so bad for her. I got so emotional for her. It made me care, and that's what it should do. And now we got a hint that we're gonna be tackling Lucas Lee next, and we're gonna be doing this with the other evil X's. That we're gonna actually be, setting things down and actually like analyzing these past relationships to actually resolve things and not just, beat the shit out of people. Like, don't get me wrong, the action stuff, the fighting is wicked. It's cool. I love it. But giving depth and character to these evil X's instead and showing that they're not actually that evil is so much better. I'm one of those people who values character and story well above action. Action is great, but if it's at the cost of character and story, it's not worth it. Character and story should always come first. This is why I like Ruby post Volume 3, basically Volumes 4 through 9, much better than I like Volumes 1 through 3. Because the story in Volumes 1 through 3, especially the first 2 volumes, is very minimal. It's there. It exists, but barely. Volume 3 starts to get better, but it really improves in Volumes 4 and onwards, where it starts actually focusing on the story rather than the action. The action almost kind of takes a back seat, and I think that's a good thing. But it's not gone. The action is still there, and it's still badass, and it's still cool. It's just not the focus anymore. And that's the best decision that could have been made. And and all those who were like ranting on about, oh, it's not Monty's vision. No, it's like, it literally was. Like, his friends who literally helped him from the start said this was what was always in the plans. So it literally was his vision. But we're not going to get into that entire argument here. The point is, this, just based on what they're doing here, honestly is better than the movie already. Like, drastically better than the movie already. And I love the movie. Don't get me wrong. I love the movie a lot. I've watched it. I've watched it recently. I've watched multiple different reactions to it in the very near past, very recently. And I still love it, and I probably always will. It's like the movie isn't hurt by this. It's just a different type of adaptation. It's just a different interpretation. That's, being created by the same creator. So it's like, there's not really anything to complain about in that regards. In that regard. There's no S there. Point is, I like that they're doing this differently, and they're actually taking the time to flesh things out and give us character and depth to these evil X's. It's going to make it feel just all the better by the end. Now, we also have a mystery that is started here. Scott was kidnapped. His death was faked. Why? Why, how, and by who? Someone opened up a portal, kidnapped Scott, and threw the coins in like the snap of a finger. Actually, it would have to be quicker than that. Because we saw basically Matthew Patel's fist make contact with Scott. So in like, I don't know, like a quarter of a millisecond or something, the portal would have had to be opened. The person would have had to grab and pull in Scott, toss out the coins, close the portal, all within like a quarter of a millisecond as Matthew's fist hit him. It's like, what? That raises a lot of questions. But yeah, this is fantastic. This is just so good. I'm very excited to see where this goes now more than ever. And I was already excited for this. But more than ever, I am just really hyped for this now. This could easily prove to be anime of the year and one of my favorite shows for sure. Um, we'll see. We will see. In the meantime, without spoiling anything, in case you have seen any of the future episodes, no spoilers. But tell me your thoughts on this episode down in the comments below. I would love to hear what you thought of Roxy's development, of Ramona's development, of Gideon's development, of Gideon and Julie having sparks. I would love to hear your thoughts on all this and more in the comments below. So tell me what you thought down there. And for now, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.